Welcome to the second session for Get Found on Google. This is our class on 4 strategies to get your church on the first page of Google search results. And this is part 2. We are going to be talking about SEO for your website. And as you recall, when we were talking about the getting found on Google, we talked about the different locations that you could get found for. And one of the top one was called the organic links. So let's just take a look at that. We're going to go on over here to Chrome here just to give you a review. Let's get a new page up here. So let's say we're looking for church. And I'm just going to do a local search right now for church. And you can see here on our results page, we have the organic links. And these are the links to websites that Google feels are relevant to the term. And we talked about how relevance is everything with Google. So as far as the organization of the Google results page and the different ways that we're going to be talking about, these are the organic links that we're going to be talking about here today. Now right here below that are the local links, and we'll be talking about that in a later session. And this particular page does not have any ads, so there are no ads in for this particular search term, which is something we'll also be talking about in a later session. But organic links is what we're going to be looking at here. So I have my search tool set to Biddeford, Maine. I work with a church in Biddeford, Maine that is doing some great things with their search terms, and you can see that they are showing up right here in the local search area, but they are also, let me just take a look down here, right there. I went right past them. This is their organic search link, meaning this is a search result that is found by Google that goes and points directly to their page. Now sometimes, and in this example we don't have that, but sometimes you'll notice when you have a search result and Google lists multiple links directly under that link. For example, in the case of Grace Point Church, it's not showing here, but larger institutions, churches may have that, and you've no doubt you have seen that. Those are called site links, and I've been asked, how do you get your church to show site links? And the answer is you don't. It's up to Google to decide. Now here is something that I've been able to, from what I understand, the more relevant your pages are and the more they are found in Google, the more of your pages that will rank for the search term. So for example, I did some work for an electrician in my town, and he's just a small electrician, not a franchise or anything like that, needed some help. We did some search optimization on his website, and after a few months he was ranking for multiple pages of his that were ranking on Google. Now Google is trying to be relevant, so showing in number 2 and number 3 and maybe even number 4 spots in the organic search the same website is not necessarily a good idea. So I noticed after a while that his 2 or 3 pages were consolidated down into one that had site links underneath it. So for those of you who may have had questions about how that works, that's how that works. So let's go on back here to our presentation for our SEO for your website. So let's do a quick review on what we learned in our last session. Google provides relevant results. We agreed on that. That's what Google's bread and butter is, giving people what they're looking for. And you need to be relevant. In other words, you need to be using keywords that are what people are going to be looking for. And we talked about that quite a bit in our last segment. So we're going to be talking about keywords quite a bit here, and that's building on what we learned in our last session. So your website. It's very important. In fact, 85% of potential visitors check out your website first before they visit. And I think that's an interesting statistic. Now, I was trying to track down exactly where I heard this, but I do believe it's true based on communication with visitors and my own habits. If you're going to an area that maybe you'll be vacationing in, or you're new in an area and you want to find a church, you're going to start checking out churches and have websites. 85% of potential visitors will check your website. And if they can't find your website, it's almost as though you don't exist, depending on your location, if they don't hear about you from word of mouth or some other avenue. And another thing about your website is the hub of your communication. And what I mean by that is, well, let's go to this next graphic. If you picture your website as the center of a spoked wheel, and all of the different aspects of your communication with your congregation and with your community are spokes of the wheel. So we can start with things like signs and banners. If you have a sign outside of your church and you're not listing your website, you're missing out on people that are driving by every day. If they're even remotely interested and want to find out more about you, if you have a website listed, they can. Newsletters, if you have a printed newsletter, put your website in there. Bulletins and programs, if you're having special occasions with a program, or maybe you have a church that does weekly bulletins, make sure that there's a link in there so people can find out what's going on other days of the week. If you have a church letterhead, make sure that you have your website listed there so that people that receive your letter may be able to look up more information about you. And business cards, if you're not putting your website on your business card, you are losing out. And these just make sense when you think about it, because all of these printed materials and signs and things like that, printed material especially, when it goes out from you, there's no way for you to edit and change that information. But the link to your website will be continually changing, expanding, and growing and evolving. So having that link is going to take what was done in the past, what was printed in the past, and link that to what you're doing now and in the future. So always a good idea. But there's also other ways to link to your website, from your Facebook page, if you have a Facebook page. Google Plus, a great way to link to your website, and we'll talk a lot about Google Plus in an upcoming session. YouTube, a very good resource to have. If you have a YouTube channel or you're posting videos, make sure you'll have that, and we'll be talking about YouTube more in a future session. Other social media, and we'll discuss some of those avenues. Directories and citations, and that's a very exciting way to get some great links to your site. Partner sites and review sites. Now these parts of this chart in the blue, those are what we would call off-page SEO, and as you remember from our last session, those are things that affect your ranking that take place outside of your website. And so we're going to be talking about these today, and giving you a little bit more information and some insight on how you can use these to help you get to that coveted page 1 position on your local searches. So let's start with the links. Quantity of links, and this is a review from a little bit from what we talked about in the past session. Google will determine the links coming to your site, like we showed in that hub, where those links are coming from, what the page rank is, whether it's a quality link or not. That's going to matter in how they rank you on your web page. The quantity and the quality, I should say. So both the how many links are coming in and what type of pages they're coming from. And we also want to add, this is something I didn't cover last time, there's different types of links that you may be seeing online. There's do follow or no follow, and you may or may not have heard these terms, and it could be confusing to you. It doesn't mean, for example, if you see a link in a website and it's a no follow link, that does not mean if you click on that link it's not going to go where it's supposed to go. You will arrive at the destination. You will go to the new page or the new site. But what it means is it's a piece of code in the website that is put in so that it's telling Google, do not index this link in your results. And what it's telling Google is not that it's not important, but to give you an example of this, people realized very quickly that the more links they had to their website, the better that they would rank. So what they were doing was called link spamming. In other words, they were going on to blogs and websites and directories and flooding them with just a lot of information that may or may not be of any good, so that the links would go to their website so that their website would increase in the rankings. Well, Google figured this out after a while, and you can imagine if you were somebody putting together, say, a local directory, and you were getting all these spam links. It was bogus material that was going on your website from contributors. You don't want that. You want to have your site be a quality site. So this was developed by software developers so that they could keep Google from ranking those bad links, and then eventually that activity died down quite a bit. Now, you still see it going on a lot in different blogs and what have you. And if you are setting up your own website, you may have seen perhaps in WordPress, depending on how you set it up, you may have the option of making your comments no follow, meaning people who put comments in there with spam links are not going to get any benefit from it. So some of the things that we're going to be showing you, some of these sites, especially social media, will have no follow links. Now there is some benefit to that, and we'll talk about that in the next following minutes. But if you are looking at increasing your backlinks to your website, so with the idea of having more page rank so that you will rank on the first page of results, you want to see if you can find do follow links. So a good way to figure that out is, I'll just mention, if you are using a Chrome or Firefox as web browsers, you can put a plugin into those browsers that will show you which links are no follow. It'll actually put a little, depending on which plugin you use, it'll probably put a box noting that link is a no follow link. So for you, as a manager of your website, if you're looking specifically for places to put do follow links, that will give you a clue as to whether or not that site or that directory is able to give you some links that will actually increase your search engine optimization. So Facebook, I'm going to mention Facebook, and the links that you will see in your Facebook pages are usually no follow links, meaning when you put a Facebook post and say on your own personal Facebook page, and maybe you recommend a local ice cream shop or something like that, and you put in their website, on your Facebook post, that link would be a no follow link, meaning that website is not going to gain any momentum directly from Google by having another link. Now, we will say this, even though the links on Facebook are no follow, there seems to be some correlation between social media and Google results. Now, it's not clear, and we talked in our first session, exactly what the algorithm that Google is using, but it does seem to be some relationship between social media and whether or not a page will rank. Now, we're going back to that example of Grace Point in Maine that I showed you earlier. When they were just starting out, and they're a church plant, they're only a couple of years into their ministry there. They had a Facebook page, and they were very good about making posts and updating it quite a bit. And it was interesting to me that they first ranked for the keyword church in the Biddeford area with their Facebook page. So having an active Facebook page for your church may be a good strategy for you to actually look at. But the links going back to your site may not necessarily increase your page rank directly. All right, I hope that made sense. But having a that's basically what this bullet point was talking about, that relationship between Google and social media. But it's a good thing to have a Facebook page, because Facebook is where your congregation happens to be. Most congregations are going to have a large percentage of their people are using Facebook on a regular basis. So if you are there, then that's a good thing. When I heard one social media expert put it this way, when he was speaking specifically about Twitter, but he said Twitter is like the water cooler of the 21st century. And if you want to be relevant, you want to be where the conversation is taking place. So Facebook is definitely in that category. So getting a Facebook page is different than your actual personal post. Now, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on Facebook. This is not a session on Facebook, but I just will say this. A Facebook profile is your personal profile. That's about you, and you can definitely talk about things that are important to you, like your church, but your Facebook page is going to be about your church or organization. So differentiating those two so that your page is a separate entity is a good idea, because in ministry you may be called to another area, and if you develop a large following on your Facebook profile, but take all of those links with you when you move to your next ministry, that's leaving your old ministry in the lurch. It's better to let your old or current ministry develop their own following. So to get a Facebook page, and we'll just quickly mention this, how this works, you want to go in your profile to the upper right, and you'll click on the gear where it says create a page. You'll go there, and then you'll be faced with choosing one of these. I'd recommend, if this is for your church, to choose the company or organization or institution, and then from there just follow the information on that. You want to link to pages and post on your site so that people on Facebook can easily find your site. Going back to our idea of the hub, your website is the center of the hub. And schedule post into your week. It's just a good idea as far as communication. If you're preaching through a series and you have a theme, you might want to have one post in the week talking about what's coming up next Sunday, what we will be talking about. Then you'll have a follow-up post, maybe a link to where people can get the sermon on online and listen to it, and then maybe another link in the coming days, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, talking about application. How does that apply to what you are, the Christian life? Maybe some examples, things like that. So just think about this as just what you're doing already, and just applying what you are already doing, and just making mention of it on your Facebook page. I think that's always a good strategy. And another piece of advice is to get help. One of the nice things about a Facebook page is that you can set another person in your church to be an admin, and that could be an administrative assistant. It could be a volunteer within the church who likes to work with social media, but they would be able to make posts to the Facebook page also, and you can get multiple people to do this. It's a great idea as part of a community effort. Now, the next part on our hub, the Google and YouTube, we had two parts of the hub. We're actually going to be talking about these specifically in later sessions, but they are important as social media. So other social media to think about, and that was one of our hubs, our spokes to our hub. LinkedIn, great idea for getting a LinkedIn profile. As a professional, you should be listed on LinkedIn anyway. It's just a great idea to be found if somebody's looking for you. People that have known you in the past, college roommates, and LinkedIn is more of what you would call a professional relationship. So this is a place where people post where they have worked before. It's sort of a resume, but it's a great opportunity to put in where you are currently doing your work. And if that's in your church, then you definitely want to put in information in your profile as far as your church website. Now, the church, your website link in your profile is a no-follow link, meaning it's good for people to click on it and find your information about your church, but it is not indexed by Google, and it won't add directly to your search results. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that LinkedIn gives you the ability to make posts just like you would do in Facebook. And the links that you put in those posts are actually do follow links. So that is definitely something you want to think about as a practice. Just like you would for Facebook, you would want to put in your links to things that are going on in your church, what you're talking about, and each Sunday in your messages. Or if you're an organization, what's going on in your organization. So putting those links in there directly to your page, those are do follow links. So that's good to know. Now, Twitter is that we mentioned earlier, and Pinterest and Instagram. From the latest information that I'm able to get, the links that are posted in these social media are no follow links. But as I mentioned before, there definitely seems to be some relationship that Google is taking into account in activity on social media and how it relates to your page rank. So if you were just making a decision, well, I can only be in one, if you were looking only for search engine optimization, you might want to think about LinkedIn as a possibility. But as I mentioned before, being where the conversation is definitely something you want to think about from a general marketing perspective, not necessarily just getting found first on a Google search. So our next category is directories and citations. And I've had people ask, what is a citation? Well, a citation is just a mention on a website or a web page or a blog. And when we say a mention, it could be just a mention of your church name. It could be a mention of you as a pastor. It may or may not have a link, but you want to, if you can, make sure that these citations have a link to your website. So some places to get citations: local news if your church is doing something noteworthy, special meetings perhaps, or you have a yearly event. My church has a yearly event called Family Fun Fest, which is growing in popularity. That's a great opportunity to get in the news, and not just your newspaper, but also radio. Radio stations now have websites. You also have newspapers, TV stations with websites. So you want to think about different ways that you can make sure that these people know what's going on in the area. So you might want to think about volunteering for articles. Any place where there's a lot of news being reported, the people that put that together are always hungry to have something new to report. So you might have an interesting perspective on the local happenings, and you can volunteer to do a free article once a week or once a month or what have you. A lot of news outlets are interested in pursuing that, and just say you do it for free, but you would like to make sure that when you do the article, it has at the bottom someplace your relationship to your church, and having that church link be put in as a do follow link. And oftentimes they will allow you to do that. So another way to get citations is well, not to get them, but to use them is to find existing citations. And it's interesting, if you've been around for a while, and I know we have some people that are church planners in our audience, but this is for you folks that have been in a church organization that has been in existence for a while. It is very likely that you have a lot of citations existing already on the web. And finding those citations and seeing if you can get your website added is a really great idea to get some links back to your website. So how do you find citations? One way is to do a search, and you would actually type into the Google search bar link:"yoursite.com, and you put in the name of your website right there. Now this is interesting to me in that I've worked with a lot of folks, and they'll say, I do have a lot of links going to my page, so I'm good to go. But when they actually investigate, and this is a good way to investigate to see if you have a lot of do follow links, they'll find that most of the links going to their website are no follow links. And this will often turn up a result with very few, if any, search results, and we can show you an example of that here in a bit. And another great way to do a search is to put your phone number in, and we'll show that, because what that's going to do is show a lot of the existing directories that are out there that have your phone number. Now you may be thinking, why in the world would people be putting my information in? And it goes back to the whole relevance issue. Let's say you're a website like Superpages or City Search, and you may have some automatic software that crawls the web looking for mentions of existing businesses or churches, because you want your site to be valuable for other people to use. So when they find your information, they actually will build a listing for you, oftentimes, not asking your permission. But because it's public information, they're building that listing for you. And if your phone number is public information, that phone number will often be listed in there. And you can find these directories and listings by doing a search with your phone number, and we'll show how to do that in a moment. And you can also do a search in Google by name if it's a unique name. Now, if the name of your church is Grace Baptist Church, that's not going to work very well for you, because there are hundreds of Grace Baptist churches or variations of that in the United States. So that may or may not work well. So let me go back here. We're going to switch over again to our browser, and I'm going to, let's see, close this. And we have a couple of searches that I've done here. Now you see up here in our search bar, I just looked up a church. I picked a name at random. I just said Topeka Baptist Church, because Topeka is in the middle of the country. So if you happen to be somebody related or are working in or know somebody at Topeka Baptist Church, this is nothing. I didn't pick this for any particular reason other than I thought it would be right in the middle of the country, and we could use that as an example. But I found the phone number for Topeka Baptist Church and I put it up here. And when you put it in quotes, what that forces Google to do is do a search for that exact phrase, and in this case, that exact series of numbers. And so you're not as likely to get a lot of these directories with hundreds of numbers. These will be websites that actually have this particular phone number, and exactly as it is typed. So you can see right here as we're going through, there's some listings here in directories, switchboard.com and local.yahoo.com. Definitely these are good places for you to start with. Let's see, there's looks like a local directory for Madison, Kansas, and there's a directory there. But you can just look through this listing and you can see a lot of these are searches. Now, if we were to go to switchboard.com, it's very likely that at switchboard.com you can claim that link, that listing, if you haven't already, and say, yes, I am the owner of this listing and I would like to update it. And oftentimes these listings will allow you to put in a website link. And many times these listings are do follow links, so that's a great thing to have. Now, it could be a worthy exercise even if it's a no follow link, so that's up to you if you'd like to do that, to put that in. So let's say, for example, here's another way to find here, and this is that link for that particular church, First Baptist Church of Topeka, right here. And when I put in link : and their website, it gives no do follow links. So that could be that they're not optimizing. They may feel no need to do that. Nothing against them. Maybe it's they're not interested in social media or have anybody within that congregation that is versed in it. So that just gives you an example. If you wanted to find any links to your website, you would just put link : and that name of your site right there. So let's flip on back here. We're going to go back here. So link search and searching your name. And now we come to creating new citations. Now, there are lots of ways to find those citations. The places that you can create new listings. Directories are a good way to do that. So you want to do a search for directories. And for example, a Baptist church directory, and we'll show you an example of how that would work. You want to link search the competition, meaning let's say you have somebody in a particular keyword you want to be found for. Maybe it would be, for example, in the other example, Topeka Church, if you wanted to be found for that. And I don't know if that other church that we mentioned even lists for that. I have no idea. But use your own imagination. If that particular keyword that you're wanting to be found for in a local search, it's going to reveal the top organic searches for that keyword. You can look and see what some of the other churches are using for backlinks, and you can see if there are any backlinks that you can look at and find out, hey, I can also get a citation or a listing at that directory. So something for you to try. All right, and also I'm going to be putting some suggested resources in a link below this video that you can download, and you can try some of those. Now, some of them are no follow, but I believe most of them are do follow. You can check that out for yourself, but I went through that and tried to make some relevant directory ideas for you. But definitely I would, if I were you, try to do these others. So let's just hop back on over here. And for example, if we did a search for, we want to be found in some directories. And I did a search earlier for church directory. Now this is going back to our relevance. If I put in the term directory, Google is thinking that I'm interested in making a church directory for my church, meaning a photo directory. So it's talking about a lot of links here on people that do photo directories. Olin Mills, for example, as a photographer. So that's not necessarily what we want, and that's when I talked about the whole relevance and what is the intent of the searcher. That's not what I wanted, but Google's trying to guess by what it knows about those words. And that's why we could say of directory of churches, and you can see in this search we're going to get a lot of of directories that possibly we could get in, like the Gospel Coalition, for example. And these are just where you can follow up on these links, go to those sites, and see if you can get a listing with your website. And you could even refine that more if you want to put your denomination directory of Baptist churches or Presbyterian churches or what have you. If you want to put that in that search term, that'll give you even more results that you can look at. So definitely something that you want to try. All right, so let's get on back to our presentation here. So creating these links, these citations, one of the things I would mention that's going to happen as you are putting them down, it can get complicated as far as the list. I would recommend a best practice. You might want to put a spreadsheet together and just put a listing of each of the citations that you have. And here's why you might want to do that. You may need to update your information at some point, and it really matters very much, and we'll talk about this with our local search listing in another session. You need to have consistent information in all of these. So when you're filling out these directories, you definitely want to make sure that you're using the exact same address, the exact same phone number, all of your information like name, address, phone number. They call it the NAD, N-A-D. Make sure your NAD, your name, address, phone number is exactly the same in each of these directories. That's going to definitely help with your SEO and putting that website in. Now, for example, going back to our Grace Baptist, or Grace Point Church in Maine, they did an excellent job with citations going to their church, and they were ranking very well within the directory, within organic search. But thankfully, they were able, after a year and a half, to get a permanent location. They were meeting in a temporary location. So they had to, best as they could, go back and find all of the citations that they had all throughout the web. And there were a bunch of them that had their old address. And that gets confusing, not only to Google, but also to people that are trying to find you if they happen to stumble across a directory that's got your wrong information. Not a good thing. That's why it's a good idea to make a list on a spreadsheet of all the directories that you're going after. Now, that's not necessarily going to catch all of them. Like we mentioned, there might be some directories that automatically list you and may take a while to change your update, if at all. So doing a search for that is a good idea. Now, there is a company called WhiteSpark. It's whitespark.ca, I believe. They do citation. They have a citation listing service, and you can either pay them to do citations. I think it's $4 a citation. Or they also have a service, I believe it's $20 a month, where you would pay the WhiteSpark, and they would go and find places for you that you can list citations. And that might be something you want to think about. But doing it this way is the way I just mentioned is definitely free and easy to do, and could definitely make a difference in your search engine optimization. Our next category is partner sites. And these are going to be sites like, for example, Sermon Audio. It's a great service. If you're using Sermon Audio and uploading your sermons there, it's a great way for you to be found there. If you are putting in your profile, your website, that is a do follow link. And there's going to be other partner sites like church plants. For example, your church may be supporting another church. You might want to make sure that that church plant gets a link on your website, and the church plant can put your link on their website as a sending church. So both of you will receive some little bit of search engine optimization juice from that, so that's a good practice. Associations, if you're part of an association and you have a listing, getting your website there would be a good idea. Universities and seminaries, if you're a graduate, oftentimes there'll be listings from these where they're kind of a where are they now, or who's who, or where are the graduates type of a thing. And if that's the case, get your listing there. And Mission boards, that's another example. Perhaps they would list all of their supporting churches that are supporting missionaries. It just is a matter of being creative and thinking of relationships that you have with other organizations or other churches that have websites, and maybe just by asking, hey, would you mind, since we are supporting you or you are supporting us, we can help each other by listing our those websites on our sites. So oftentimes they'd be interested in doing it, kind of a back and forth. Both of you will be able to get that link from the other, and that will definitely help. And review sites, one of the other spokes in the hub. When we're talking about review sites, we have to talk about negative reviews. So as you probably are familiar, and I think I have it listed here, Yelp. That's a great, well, very well-known review site, for particularly for restaurants, but they do branch out, and I believe that you can get a listing there for your church. But I do want to mention, if you put a listing in one of these review sites, there is a very distinct possibility that you could get negative reviews. Maybe somebody came to your church and they didn't like what they heard from the pulpit, or they thought you were negative, or they didn't there wasn't enough parking, or some other thing that went awry in the whole situation. Now, I don't think that you should necessarily shy away from review sites because of the possibility of negative reviews. If you are doing anything at all in your community that is working or getting exposure and people are taking notice, you're going to get negative reviews. It's just going to happen. There are ways that you can have people that are more positive. If, let's say, you have a local review site and you have a listing there with a link, if you do what's called a positive review campaign, now you got to be careful how you do this, but just ask some of the people who are very big supporters of your church, maybe your leadership committee, maybe they would do some positive reviews. And when I say this, I don't mean you should be spammy about it. Just be upfront and honest. If you get a negative review and somebody in leadership can put a positive spin or say, we're sorry that this particular thing, who knows what it is, happened, but we definitely try to help all people that are coming. If it's something about parking, you can acknowledge the fact that parking is limited. Who knows what it could be? But if, and I use the parking issue, that's not necessarily a bad thing to have as a negative review. There's such a thing in marketing that is known as social proof. And to give you an idea what that means is, social proof is, let's say you're in a city that you're not familiar with and it's getting close to dinner time and you're thinking, where should we go to eat? And you're walking down the sidewalk and you see a line of people that are lined up at a particular restaurant, and it might be an hour wait. Well, the fact that there's a line of people there gives you the clue. That must be a really good place to eat. If people are willing to wait an hour to eat there, it must be a good place to eat. Therefore, let's go to that. So in the example of a negative review that says there's no parking, that may be social proof that something interesting is happening at your church and people are really wanting to go there. But there could be other negative reviews, especially when it comes to content in messaging, where people just don't agree with the viewpoint that you're coming with, especially if you have a true biblical viewpoint of the world and a true biblical worldview. There are definitely going to be some people that may have a negative review about that. And look at that as just another example of a way that you can put in that review site, have your time kind of like a rebuttal, and maybe some other people in your church might want to join in and help you with that, so that the people that are looking for a church that is something that's fitting in with their worldview that matches yours, a negative review may actually be a positive for people that are looking for you. I hope that makes sense. And you might want to look around for local review sites in your area. You could do a Google search with the name of your town and review sites, and you could find a lot of different things. It's going to be probably some of the same sites that you may have found before, probably your newspaper, maybe some sites that are specifically just for reviews, and you're going to see some of those in the category of the directories like City Search and things like that are going to be having a lot of review possibilities. And of course there's Google Plus. And we'll be talking about reviews on Google Plus in another session. So that's all of our off-page SEO. Excuse me as I take a drink there. Now we're going to be talking about on-page SEO and just doing a review. We went in quite a bit of detail on this in our last session. So this is just a quick review. Location affects quality. Having the keywords in the right place on your website will definitely help. And having your keywords in your domain is probably the best place as far as strength. In the URL, I mentioned this before, you definitely want to make sure that you are putting your keywords in your URL. If you, for example, I mentioned WordPress. If you're using WordPress, you want to make sure that you set it to having your links set to keywords rather than just numbers that don't make any sense. You want to make sure that your addresses are keyword searchable. And page titles, H1 tags, paragraphs, and copy. And here's some additional advice about on-page SEO. The more relevant content means more relevant keywords. And by that, I just simply mean you want to be writing articles and you want to be writing blog posts. The more content that you are making available on your website, the more keywords you're going to be found for. The thing that you need to be thinking about in this context is how can I be providing relevant content to people? And in this realm, what I'm talking about specifically is content that is going to actually help people and what they need. Taking aside the whole search engine optimization part of that, just providing the more that you provide to help people, whether it's a blog post on a regular basis or articles or sections, static pages, have that there also, that are on your website that will actually help people in what is there, the more helping of people as a byproduct, you're going to have keywords that Google can find and can use and can link to you. So just providing people what they're interested in reading about or what they need to read about is going to be helpful for you in your on-page SEO. And you want to use keywords everywhere. And by that I mean, I don't think I mentioned this last time, alt tags and photo file names. And this is maybe something that if you've got a website that you're been uploading to and working on for a while, you may or may not have noticed, especially in WordPress. I'm going to use WordPress as an example. There are fields that you can use to put in your alt tags. Now, alt tags were designed primarily so that when somebody would hover over a photo, it would actually have a tag or a description of what that photo was about. When it was first started, it was an idea that web browsers that were used for the visually disabled would be able to read or explain to people that can't see the picture what the picture is about. And that is definitely a good thing to have. But a lot of folks don't put anything in the alt tags field at all. So that's a missed opportunity as far as number one, being more relevant and explaining to people what the photo is about, and number two, putting in keywords. And we don't want to do keyword stuffing. So, for example, if you were that Topeka church, you don't want to just have every photo that you have be use the alt tag Topeka church. You want to take the opportunity to use as many keywords as you need in that alt tag. Also, in the photo file name, if you're taking pictures with your phone camera or a digital camera and you're putting them on your computer, the computer is going to give that photo a series of numbers and letters usually. And so it's not a file name that makes any sense to anybody other than the computer. You need to replace those file names so that it's not a series of number.jpg. It would be our church family picnic in Topeka, or Topeka First Baptist Church family picnic. Whatever the subject of the photo is, you want to use that as the file name that you upload. One more place where you can put keywords that can be found. Now, also you might want to think about using SEO plugins, and I'm talking about WordPress again. There is one from a company called Yoast. If you do a search for plugins, Yoast SEO, this has a whole lot of features in it that will enable you to easily get your on-page SEO going. Give you some places to fill in meta tags and snippets. A snippet is when you are reading a search engine results page, the little descriptions there are often pulled directly from websites, but you do have the option in designing your page in putting in a snippet, meaning you want this specific text to be used in that place instead of Google just randomly finding something off of the first page of your website. But plugins will definitely help with getting your SEO house in order, and that's a great way to do that. And the Yoast plugin is free, by the way. And the final bit of advice that I would say, when we are talking about backlinks, if you've done any search at all online, you've probably seen some places that will list that they will sell you will buy backlinks from them. And this is what's called black hat SEO. White hat SEO is pretty much what we have discussed so far. These are the things that are Google is happy with, and what works well, having great content, things like that. That's white hat SEO, meaning that's what the good guys do. Black hat means you're trying to get around the rules a little bit. You're trying to circumvent Google, so you're going to go out to a company and maybe buy hundreds or thousands of links to your website. Now, going back to what we talked about, the quality of links, Google will take note of unusual activity and also where the links are coming from. And if it's coming from a bad website or a bad neighborhood, they may just give you negative SEO. So that's definitely something you want to be careful about. Don't go buying backlinks to your website. Go ahead and put your links out there. And in this same vein, when we're talking about, say, for example, citations, you don't want to just get everybody together for a special meeting one night with their laptops and say, okay, you put these citations in and you put these in, and we'll all do it together, and we'll get 1,000 citations in 24 hours. It's not a good idea, because Google's going to look at that and say, for some reason this church or organization or this website went from 0 backlinks to 1,000 backlinks overnight. Something's going on there that's not right, and they may actually give you negative SEO for that. When you're doing citations, it's a good practice to just do them a little bit at a time. So if you're the one that's going to be doing your citation program, just make your list and start going down your list, and maybe once a day you go out and do a citation, or maybe every other day you spend 5 minutes at it. This is going to be something that over time will definitely benefit your site, and doing it slowly, evenly over time is going to definitely not raise any red flags with Google. It's going to look more natural, and it's going to look like it should. So when I say don't go black hat, don't try to circumvent things and tweak them for your website. Definitely not a good idea. So that's all we have for today in our session. As always, if you have questions or comments, you can leave them below, and we'd be happy to address those. So looking forward to our next sessions. We'll be talking about some local SEO and some other interesting options with Google Plus and YouTube. So looking forward to that.